let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Good afternoon. Hello. My name is Leah Hubbard. I'm the Water Resource Specialist for the City of Prescott. And today, this is your April version of Drop by Drop, and we're going to talk about water conservation, focusing on the indoor conservation aspect and GPCD. So, you can bring your lunch. There's also snacks on the table in the back, and please eat them. We brought them for you. If you silence your cell phones, we would appreciate it. We also are going to be videotaping the program, so that Prescott Media Center is in the back. It'll just go on our website, and no one's face will be shown other than mine, so no worries about that. The program format, we usually speak for about 30 minutes. We'll have 10 minutes of questions, and then we'll have dispersed questions. There's multiple members of the city, employees here, if you'd like to speak with them individually on what they do. We also are going to post the fact sheets on the city website as well as those videos, so you are welcome to check them out. The easiest way to get there is through PrescottWater.com. It links directly to the conservation page. And then today I did want to bring up, I'm showing you a lot of graphs and charts, and so if you have extra questions during the actual presentation, don't be afraid to ask them so that we can stop on that chart specifically. And there is hearing devices available in the back if you need them. All right, so upcoming topics for Drop by Drop today, like I said, is GPCD. Next month is going to be outdoor conservation, and then in June we're going to talk about rainwater harvesting right before the monsoon season starts. So the fact sheet summary, you should have gotten a fact sheet on the back table. If you didn't get one, we can give you one. And water conservation has reduced community water use in Prescott over time. We're now down to less than 120 gallons per person per day. And the city offers water conservation resources and rebates through our conservation program and then through public events and things like that. So what is gallons per capita per day, or GPCD? GPCD is the measure of how much water is used per person per day in a community or a household. A GPCD enables a comparison to other communities, and it's a good basis for setting further water efficiency goals. So it's a good way to measure yourself against other communities that may be bigger than yours or may have more industry than yours, and so that's why we use it. So I'm going to do big picture, and we're going to go down to little picture. So this is the GPCD at the federal level. The United States Geological Survey, or USGS, measures water consumption on a 5-year basis, and they've been doing it since 1950. The most recent report was released in 2015. It is titled Public Supply and Domestic Water Use in the United States. It's actually a very interesting read, and it's not super long. So if you want to check it out, it's on their website. And this report found that total withdrawals for public supply actually decreased 7% from 2010 to 2015, while population actually increased by 4%. So I know this is tiny. We're going to zoom in onto the west when we can, but I took this straight from that report, and so if you want to look at it online, you can. But I'm going to point out just a couple things from this side before I zoom in on that side. So this is New York. The green line, or the left-hand line, is your 2010, and then the purple line is your 2015. So let's look at the most populated states for a second. New York actually did increase their usage. Let's see, Florida also increased their usage. But if you come over here to Texas, look at how much Texas decreased their usage. Same with California. So here's a zoomed in one, so it's a little bit bigger so that you can see what we're talking about here. Arizona is right here, and we stayed almost exactly the same over that 5-year period. We did not decrease or increase. And as you can see, Alaska's municipal use is very small. They don't have a lot of municipal use out there. This is only through public supply, so that means that it's either a private or public water company that serves over 25 people. So this does not take into consideration domestic wells and different things like that. So probably in some of these less populated states, a lot of people are on their own wells and we're not included in this study. Oh, real quick, it also represents surface water supplies and groundwater supplies for those water companies. So Idaho reported 186 GPCDs, so that was the highest state that had reported, and Connecticut only reported 35 GPCD. Yes, so they are considered the lowest. The national average was about 83. So when you take the highest and the lowest. But what's really interesting, and the USGS was very interested to talk about this, is from 2010 to 2015, California reported a 17% decrease in domestic use. And they attributed it to the wide-scale water use reductions due to the drought. So some of you may be from California or you read about it, to where when they were having serious water issues, they were paying people a lot of money to remove turf. They were doing all of these different water conservation programs. And you can actually see it in a statewide level because it did work. It was just rather expensive because of the way they had to do it. So this chart is hard to read, and I have a little cheat sheet so that I can point out individual ones. This is GPCD at the state level. So I got this data from ADWR. And this top line right here is Scottsdale. So the GPCD of Scottsdale. The next line down, which is technically green, but it doesn't look green, is the city of Tempe. This one is Gilbert, this blue line that kind of increased a little bit. As we know, Gilbert's been growing, so it makes sense that Gilbert increased a little bit. The next one down is Phoenix. And then we have Tucson, is this yellow line. And as you can see right here, the yellow line and the red line come together. Well, the red line is us, is the city of Prescott. And this line that starts here in 2008 is Prescott Valley. So the bottom three are Tucson, Prescott, and Prescott Valley. Oh, the ADWR asked me to make it very clear, this is only single-family residential GPCD. So this does not include industry, this is not including the commercial, this is individual households. So why do we think Scottsdale's is so high? Pools. Yep. I looked at Zillow this morning, and every single house for sale in Scottsdale had a large pool in the backyard. It's also the demographic. There tend to be bigger homes. They tend to have multiple bathrooms. And so that's likely a reason why Scottsdale is a lot higher. But, you know, we saw Phoenix down here too, and it's not that high. So it's kind of depends on the demographic and how people behave in the area.
Can you imagine what the Scottsdale would look like if they included all the golf courses?
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, golf courses are primarily watered in the state of Arizona with our effluent supplies, but
That's
down
good.
there, I think that they're CAP water supplies. So this is just another way to look at the data. So this is a bunch of different Arizona cities, and this is their 2017 single-family residential GPCD. So you can see, let's see, City of Prescott is this one right here. Town of Prescott Valley is right here. Tubac, pretty high. Scottsdale, here we see it again. Gilbert. Let's see other ones. Here's Chandler over here. So when I took the average of that, we got 98. And what's important to note is from the state's perception, the city of Prescott, I believe we were at 74, if I remember correctly. So the way the state figures out GPCD, because GPCD can be configured in a lot of different ways, is they take the municipal demand, they take the municipal demand divided by the population served, divided by 365 days in a year. Now, how do they get population? They use census records. As we know, the last census was in 2010, so that's a pretty old census record. So what they do is they take their census from 2010, and then they take how many single-family residences were built in each year, and they add it together to figure out what they consider the average population of that municipality. So this is all coming from Arizona, or from the ADWR website. The GPCD program, so a very specific program is in place at the state level. It was established with the Groundwater Code in 1980, but it wasn't implemented until 1987. Then as we discussed, it's calculated this way. The AMAs specifically have experienced an average decrease of 2.39 GPCD per year. So the GPCD program is a very specific conservation-oriented program that each municipality or water provider must follow. It includes education, it includes different things so that we are providing the public the best opportunity to conserve water. All right, so now we're back down to Prescott. So as I said before, ADWR considered ours to be about 74. And they report back to us what our GPCD is. And they base it on the data from the city's annual water withdrawal and use report. So we submit that each year, and then the state comes back with it at the end of the summer usually. Now, ADWR obviously gave me data for single-family residential, so they look at it a lot of different ways, but the number that they give back to us is community GPCD. So the community GPCD is including industry, doctor's offices, the YMCA, all of those. And you can see over time, this is what Prescott's GPCD, as reported from the state, looks like. So why do we think it used to be so high in 2002? Anybody?
Lawns.
Lawns, that's a good one. So 2002 was when the tiered rate structure came in, which we don't attribute all of our water conservation to that, but that was a step forward. The 2006 is when rebates were started to be seriously offered by the city, and you can see from 2006 down, it moved pretty quickly. So that was lawns were a big first thing that a lot of people removed here. So through different conservation measures over time and different things that the city has done, the GPCD has gone down. The last reported GPCD number came from the 2017 report, and we got 118. We will be getting the next one in late summer of 2019. So we've turned in our report, and ADWR will give us that number once they've settled on it. As far as household GPCD, so I was surprised when they told me that single-family residences was 74, because I took 6 Prescott households in which I knew the occupancy. So that's hard to do here. We don't necessarily know how many people are living in each home. We don't have that kind of billing data. But I took 6 Prescott households in which we did know kind of what their yards looked like or how many people lived there. So among these households, 3 of them were 2-person homes, and 3 of them were 4-person homes. So they had 2 adults and 2 children. Some of the households had gardens, or we joked rainforests in the backyard. Some of them had xeriscaping and were very native. And this provided kind of a reasonable average of just the typical Prescott user for us. So this is kind of the rainforest one, and they had 2 kids, so you never know. Someone could have kids that they have to give baths to every night. You know, we don't really know what a demographic truly looks like within a home, but sometimes 4-person households still use very low water. And then these are the 2-person households, which tended to be about the same for residential water usage. So just as a comparison, we got 42 gallons per capita per day from this sample. But you're right, it is a small sample.
I guess.
Usually we shoot for 30. So Prescott's household GPCD, it varies widely. It does. And so that's why we rely on the state to give us this number. Because if we had to configure it with all of our 23,000 billing customers, it would take a long time. And on average, so this is straight from the ADWR website, they say that every Arizona resident uses on average of 145 gallons per day. And we use much less up here, but we have much less industry. We have very few large-scale turf facilities. We have very small water usage outdoors compared to some of these other municipalities. So then, if you want to figure your own GPCD, because I know you want to compare it to everybody else's, because that's the goal, right, is to be better than your neighbors, you can use this fact sheet. So the fact sheet that you received earlier on the back has this chart. If you are a City of Prescott water user and you would like me to provide your data to you, I can do that. I have little slips of paper up front. So afterwards, if you want to fill that out, and I will email you what your 2018 numbers were. So you want to take your consumption, your billing days, and your number of people. Maybe you had your relatives live with you for the whole month of December to celebrate the holidays. That's going to impact your GPCD. It's based on how many people live in your home. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take that consumption and you're going to divide it by the billing days, divided by the number of people in that household, and that's how you'll get that monthly average GPCD. So this column. Monthly average GPCD,
Right.
and then you're going to add them together. So you'll add your monthly average GPCDs together, and then you'll divide by 12 to give a yearly average GPCD for your household based on your monthly average. So some months you're gonna have a lot more, some months you're gonna have less, so you wanna figure. So here's an example of one filled out. So as you can see, you wanna figure out what your sum of your monthly average divided by 12 is so that you know what your monthly GPCD is. And this residential customer was 30.8. So this is just off of a basic one that we chose. Like I said, the slips of paper up front, so if you would like your billing data, please let me know and I will provide it to you. And water conservation, like I said, we are under 120. Our state goal is 150 gallons per capita per day, so we have been under it for quite some time and continue to be under it. And we offer water conservation resources. So on the back table, I have aerators, shower heads, different things that you can take for your own home if you would like them. And then also, next month we'll be talking about outdoor water conservation. So I'm willing to take questions. Please remember there is surveys back there. If you would like to take a survey, please do. And then we will be seeing you next time. So, are there any questions? I know you have a question.
I'll talk to you later about that.
Okay.
I was wondering why you think that Prescott Valley's GPCD is lower than Prescott.
I was curious about that myself. Like I said, this is reported data from ADWR, so I don't really disagree with them, whatever they got. But I live in Prescott Valley, and so I've seen that Prescott Valley's demographics are different than ours. However, they are a younger community, so they probably have more water efficient features in those homes, even though some of those homes have lawns. They may have different qualifications. They have a lot of family residential and things like that. And so I'm not really sure what the distinct difference is, but that's what the state says single family residential is for them. So
Well, one thing I've been thinking about, because we've been working hard at our house to get our GPC down, and we have dropped it about 15 gallons per person per day over the last 20 years.
Okay.
But if you're working and you're not home all day, so you're not flushing the toilet, you're not eating lunch, and a lot of people do eat dinner out these days too, so you're not running your dishwasher as often. So those are some things that could be
that could be it. You would be amazed at how much your GPCD will change in your household. So last year after this presentation, I went home and I figured mine out. You have to understand, I live with 2 college students, myself, and a large dog that likes to swim in her little pool in the backyard. But my GPCD was terrible. I was embarrassed by it. And I knew that there was something I could do about it. Well, I had just moved into my new home, so I didn't have my billing records. And I found that both of my toilets were leaking. And I fixed both of them, and my GPCD dropped significantly. And so indoor and outdoor water conservation will have a big impact on this. And you're right, a lot of people, aren't home during the day or might not be cooking at home. That's why the community GPCD is also important. Just because you're not at home doesn't mean you're not using water within your community. So, sounds good.
What the heck is Connecticut doing to be at 35?
Is it worth it?
Well, yeah, that was something I was considering. So Connecticut is a wealthier state. They have a lot of seasonal residents, as far as I understand it. I don't think I've ever actually been there. They also probably don't do a lot of outdoor watering because they're a relatively wet area compared to here at least. And so I think that it's just all of those combinations probably put together of why Connecticut would be so small, but I thought the same thing when I read that report.
I wonder what their comparison of percentage of multifamily housing is to single family.
I'm not sure. I didn't ask for multifamily
Yeah.
specific data for this presentation. Of course, they haven't, but we don't have a ton of multifamily here. We do, of course, have multifamily. And so that's why I chose the single family residential, just because it is our primary demographic here. Multifamily has its own struggles when it comes to water conservation because a lot of them aren't individually metered. They're on a master meter. A lot of tenants don't pay a water bill, so they don't think about their water bill. I know that I lived in an older apartment complex downtown and everything leaked all the time. And so that's why it's important to kind of separate these out, because you never know if you have an apartment complex from 1960 or you have a newer built one that's doing better on water conservation.
The leakage, I just read last night in National Geographic, the city's article, they said 30% of the world water supplies, municipalities, is lost through leakage. And they're looking at some technologies, even a little robot that goes through the lines. But if that could be addressed, which is difficult, think of that, 30% is huge.
It is. The city took a very active role in that, I think a decade ago, I believe. And so we are state required to have less than 10% of what's called lost and unaccounted for water. And we've been about 6%. So ours is a lot lower than some municipalities. I believe it is Israel that has like almost 0%. So some of the kind of desert countries have even better numbers than we do. And so we can always do better. But there is, a lot of old infrastructure, whether it be here or Britain or wherever. And so updating infrastructure over time is going to be important because we lose a lot of our water resources through our infrastructure.
Along with that, this is the big question. Obviously, you and Prescott probably has looked at other places for good modeling, for things that really work. What would you consider that's been presented, or maybe should be presented to the city of Prescott as far as the most radical approach? I'll give you my hint. I don't know if it's been done. I would think it has, where you run lines for the effluent to every toilet in every customer. So where that's on a closed loop circuit, that you're the only thing losing is evaporation.
So that is
Has something like that been
definitely
presented to Prescott? Would Prescott be of a mindset that would even actually look at that? Because humble me, I'm just a common citizen, but if I looked at that, the cost, I'd say, oh my God, putting PEX lines into every toilet. But when I think of the cost of that pipeline from the Big Chino aquifer, there is no comparison. We're talking millions as opposed to hundreds of thousands.
So
Am I right?
kind of. So if we were to extend our effluent lines all through the entire city of Prescott to every single toilet, the costs would be astounding. We don't have that kind of infrastructure in place. That being said, there has been high-rise towers in Sacramento, I believe, that have done that same thing. And so on certain scales, it's feasible. On a large scale, taking a city from the 1880s and doing it probably would be a much larger project than anyone could envision.
But there would be pockets where you could do that.
Now, there's technologies that are advancing all the time. We don't know that in 10 years that our effluent isn't going to be treated to drinking water standards and sent back through the pipes. So there is other opportunities as technology advances other than using effluent into like toilets specific. But when you say things like that, people get kind of weirded out that they might be drinking water that was already treated and sent back through. So it's all a societal kind of discussion that we have to have over time of how do we conserve water, how do we finance it, and how do we do it properly. Did that answer your question?
Would Prescott be willing to look at those things? I mean, or is it have blinders on? We're only going to use the Big Chino, and we don't have to mess with anything else. Or has your been experience that Prescott is willing to look at those other things, even cutting golf courses off and things like that?
Well, it is important to note that our effluent supplies, which we will have a discussion about recharge and recovery in the future, so please attend it. Our effluent supplies are a big part of our water portfolio, and we do recharge them back into the aquifer. And so that would be something else that we would have to if you're going to send it back through toilets, we wouldn't be necessarily recharging the aquifer. And so it's a very big policy discussion. Now, that being said, you may have recently read in the newspaper, the mayor's released some things that we are using a lot less water than we expected to be using. And so that's more policy discussions that are going to have to be enacted of whether or not we need future supplies yet, or what we're going to do. And so that's what the citizens of Prescott will decide into the future, and that's kind of a bigger discussion than just water conservation alone. But technology will keep advancing. Toilets will now flush 0.8 gallons per flush. They'll keep going down to a certain extent. They'll probably plateau. And so at this time, it's important to take the older infrastructure throughout the city and replace it kind of on a small scale, in my mind. This is just my opinion. Instead of doing a large scale infrastructure project such as putting effluent into toilets. Yes.
So I was thinking more along the lines of market drivers. Is there any interest in providing more real-time data as to how much every subscriber is using, perhaps publishing that data, perhaps even just making it available to the subscriber themselves so that they can catch problems as they occur, modify their usage and see an instant result?
So those meters do exist. The city specifically replaced their meters not that long ago, and so I'm not sure how willing to replace meters again. But you'll see it in, I believe it was Gilbert that did it. But you'll see as you drive down the street, the stoplights have those weird things on them, and that's actually a Wi-Fi signal to people's water meters. So I don't know how many of you are APS users, but if you get on APS's website, you can see your electricity in a pretty much 15-minute increment. They do make water meters like that now. They're expensive, they're new technology. Some of the early released ones didn't do so well. So it is feasible, it is doable, but again, that's an infrastructure question of, do you want to replace everyone's meters? Do you want to mount these Wi-Fi things downtown and around? And do you get signal around all of our mountains here? And so it'll be a kind of a bigger discussion in the future.
And is there are there any technologies that meter endpoint usage, like for instance, some adapted to a shower head or an under sink thing?
Probably not to that scale. But these meters that I was just at a water conference not that long ago that discussed these new meters, and the cool thing about the 15-minute increments, it's for the whole house, and you can see sudden leakage. So you can catch a water leak, so you have a pipe burst, you can catch it very quickly. So instead of, you're sleeping and it happens and you don't know overnight, it could warn you. It could send you a text to your app that says, hey, you have a leak. And so over time, technology will keep continuing forward. And older cities such as this will have to make decisions when they want to move forward with these things. Gilbert's a younger community as well. They probably are placing more meters than we are. They wouldn't have to replace all of their old meters as much. And so it was probably in their best interest at that time to do that. Is it for the city right now? I can't answer that. That's not a decision I would make. It's kind of whether or not we want to move forward with technology.
Does Arizona still sell water to California?
So that's a complex issue of water rights. So the Colorado River system, of course, goes to Nevada, Arizona. It was all allocated through the water rights of 1912. I believe it was 1912. So California gets a piece of that just because they had a population at the time, so they have senior water rights. Recently, some state agencies did try to sell it to Arizona, but the governor put a stop to it and the director of the Arizona Department of Water Resources. So in recent memory, I can't remember of selling any water rights to California. Yes?
On the chart, it shows that Prescott's GPCD has gone up, it looks like, since 2015 maybe. Is that because of growth?
That's a hard answer. So it was 115 2 years in a row, and then it went up to that 118. So it didn't go up by much. But it could just be a variety of different things. It could be that we just had a lot more building permits that specific year. It kind of depends on how you look at the data. 6 different people could look at it 6 different ways. And so I would have to ask ADWR specifically why they think it did go up, but it could have been, it's probably based on building permits specifically because they have to base their population off of their building permits. That's my assumption.
Could it also be more outdoor watering because of drought?
I don't think that would have such a big impact. When we had bark beetle problems here, our outdoor watering did skyrocket because people were under the impression if they water their trees, but I haven't seen water spikes here due to drought specifically since I've been employed at the city.
2002 was the year of the fire,
Mhm.
which was extremely dry,
Right.
and then we had the fire. So I think that's what why that went up so much.
And that could be why this went up too, because 2017 we had a pretty wet winter, but then we had a really dry water year. So water years go from October to October, and we didn't have precipitation for 9 months. So you kind of have to, even if you have native plant species, sometimes you have to give your outdoor plants a drink, and so it could be something like that. Not sure. Yes.
The agreement with Prescott Valley over the water ranch, does Prescott have any incentives, rights, pressure, nudging to ask or suggest that Prescott Valley do more tiered, a little more effort as far as the water conservation?
So as far as the Big Chino Water Ranch, I'll definitely come in October. That's when we'll focus on that specific question. As far as Prescott Valley, they kind of do their own water education piece for conservation, but they haven't necessarily done any kind of rebate program or anything like that. I know some of the citizen water advocacy groups are trying to get Prescott Valley involved, but of course it's their own municipality and their own decisions. And so we don't have any kind of control over what they do, and we can't tell them to conserve or do rebates or whatever that may be. That's their decision.
Even with the joint agreement, they don't have any say in those things?
That's just its own thing, which we'll discuss in October.
I was wondering, is there any way do they monitor how much water they use out of fire hydrants?
Yes, that might be a question for Leslie after, because I don't know as much about that, but as much as we possibly can measure lost and unaccounted for water, we do. So it depends on if there's like a meter on it. But for the majority of the time, I believe we do measure it.
But that brings up, I know a few years ago, we were trying to, construction companies could come and get water from the hydrants. Does that still happen?
It does, they're metered, they get effluent hydrants as well. So sometimes it kind of depends on where they're located and where our lines are located, but a lot of them use effluent supplies on dust control. So they're not using our municipal supply.
That's good.
Yeah.
Could you go back to your previous slide of the curve, that one? Okay, the drop there was achieved primarily by single-family homes, I presume, and not multifamily.
I'm guessing that is true.
Okay, so the question I'd like to focus on is the opportunity within multifamily, which means the rental community. So question one is, do you have any data on the extent to which shower heads have not been replaced, toilets are old toilets, any way to gauge the extent of what that opportunity might be in multifamily?
We don't have that specific of data, but we do have the water resource management model. This is a new thing that we just got that does show the average uses of different buildings. All the utility billing accounts are in there. So that's something we'll be able to use in the future for this. And then we can look at when the building was built. So I do have an apartment complex. I won't tell you what it is because he's going through the process of redoing every single apartment. Because that's an owner's decision. So it's hard to give rebates to renters if renters don't pay water bills. So it's usually the owner of the building's decision. In the future, I would like to target multifamily.
The question is, do you have any gauge or any sense of what the GPCD is within the rental units?
We do, so the state will have multifamily specific GPCD, but again, they'll have to make certain assumptions, just as they have to do a single family residence. So we don't have very specific data on how old a toilet is or things like that. We can just keep doing our best with our rebate program and targeting certain people to get those older apartment complexes kind of revamped, those older hotels. We can do that part, and then ADWR can kind of see from a grand scheme of things, multifamily.
For example, offering some incentive to go to individual metering of each unit.
I personally hadn't thought of that. I don't know if we're gonna pursue that specifically, but we do give commercial lots bigger incentives through our rebate program. So there's a cutoff of how much money you can get per property, but we do special things for big commercial properties such as apartment complexes.
How many of those big commercial rebates are being given out?
In the 2006 to 2009 timeframe, there was a lot because we had a full-time water conservationist. It's been less now, but the city is taking a new targeting approach in the future, so you can expect those numbers to change as we move forward. We're going to start targeting them more, yeah.
I assume that
Let's see.
that charge, so like in electricity, a large user gets a discount rate. And I assume that everyone pays a flat rate for water.
Some of the industrial users get a special, that's a utility billing question. I don't know the exact breakdown of it off the top of my head, but we don't have very many industrial users, so not a lot of people get that. The vast majority are either residential or commercial. And I don't believe there's that much of a difference between those two rates. There's a difference though.
Do we have data that shows the influx and leaving of commercial and industrial and agricultural usage over the GPCD?
We don't. I have the model that could eventually do that. I haven't pulled that specific kind of data. We just got this new model that we're playing with and we're learning about how to use it. And so eventually we could get down to the numbers that way, but we haven't done that yet. But we do know who the big users are in Prescott. They have been, targeted for conservation in the past, golf courses. One of my predecessors got all the extra greens out of there that was not necessary for golf. And so that decreased water usage on golf courses. And so it kind of, on an annual basis of who we target and who we have discussions with to decrease water usage. Because it's hard to target every billing customer in Prescott appropriately, per se.
And I guess assuming, so like if you raise the rates on those people who use more, that would disincentivize business from coming here in the first place.
Yeah.
And offering rebates to those same people who are already paying a discount rate, it seems like a monetary bleed based on the amount of water you consume. The city loses greater amounts of money based on the amount of water you consume.
To an extent, but we do have the tiered rate structure and commercial users do have that as well. And so the more water you use, the higher the rate is for the water that you're using.
Oh,
And-
that would answer my question.
Yeah, so that's the tiered rate structure of the city. We've had that since about 2002.
Oh, I see.
And we just went through a rate study recently. So I haven't seen the results of that yet, but that increased it a little bit. So. Yes.
On your leak repairs, when you focus just on that, is that pretty productive for as a good source of conservation? And if it is, should that be tweaked a little bit?
Do you mean on a full city scale or on a residential scale?
Wherever you're offering the rebates for leaks. I mean, leaks are so easy to detect on a house.
So the current rebate for leaks has not been used a lot because it's not very much. So you get $5 one-time rebate per leak you fix. So if you're fixing a bunch of other stuff and it's on the receipt, that's easy to apply for. But usually people who have major leaks are replacing their whole yard line system and it costs a lot more money, so that $5 doesn't really seem like much. On a city level, we've done a very good job at fixing that kind of stuff, of leaks under our roads. We do have main breaks, and as any city is going to, but we do our absolute best to keep our infrastructure updated. Leaks inside the home, it's usually the silent leaks that get you. So, those, as I said earlier, when I replaced my toilets, I didn't know they're leaking. And I'm a water conservationist. The sound of running water drives me crazy, but I couldn't hear it. So that's why I have toilet tabs back there to drop into your tank. And if you get color in your bowl, it means you have a silent leak. Checking your swamp coolers at the end of the summer to make sure they aren't going to freeze. Doing different things like that is how you on a residential scale can do that.
I check my meter once a year, just out of peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's fail safe.
Right.
If everything's turned off, nobody's using any water, you look at your meter. If there's no movement, you know you have no leaks.
Exactly, and that's usually what I recommend to people if they're unsure. But you have to make sure you turn your ice maker off, because that'll get you. All right, if there's no other questions, we can do kind of a dispersed Q&A. We have a few different employees here, so myself, Leslie Grazer, Water Resource Manager for Water Resources. We have Orrin Thomas, Stormwater Specialist, Matt Colleen, Water Quality and Lakes, sorry, I forgot your title for a second, Environmental Coordinator, I knew it. We also have Marla here, who is with Water Protection. So if you have any questions, feel free to talk to any of us, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you.